So I don't know if anybody will join us, but rumor has it they are moving probably across Indiana right about now,
Yeah,
maybe Ohio.
Dad was in the car during Dr. Martin's class.
Okay. So it's a brave new world. So either way, I'll record it for them. So Aaron, I believe, stayed behind. So it appears that we've got, assuming that's Gavin.
Yep.
So I don't know if Keenan will be joining us or not, or he's listening to yours.
He's listening to mine.
Okay, and then Erin's still in Wisconsin, right?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, so she may or may not join us. That
I
is her
doubt she'll
choice.
join us.
I imagine she's got things to do, so the
Yeah.
reason she stayed behind, so. Okay, so it is what it is. You're gonna take advantage of, so are you seeing in presenter mode, or are you seeing the full slide?
I see the whole slide.
Okay, so it's translating that is not two slides?
No.
Okay, so it's, I'm seeing on my laptop in presentation mode. So, okay, so it'll be recorded. If you can't, if we lose you along the way, we'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
If you're not hearing us, give a shout and we'll try to speak louder.
Will do.
So, lecture 12, lab for Monday. I'd like to try to, for the judging team, to make up your missed lab before Monday so we can continue on. I don't know if that's possible or not. We can talk about it when you get back or over the weekend. I'm willing to come in on the weekend to do that as well. First exam is going to be Wednesday after break. So after sale, I'm not going to do it during sale week. That's normally when I do the first exam. So it'll probably cover through Monday. I'll get that posted. So you'll have 2 weeks to study. You know, if you generate some cheat sheets, you can, while you're sitting watching cows, you can study.
Is it next Monday or this past Monday?
Through past Monday. So
Okay.
that's like 11 lectures. This is 12, somewhere in there. I'll try to get the breaks up there this afternoon as to which ones are going to go where and the rest of the exams and all that stuff. I apologize. We can. So bring your schedules on Monday and we'll see if you want to do something down at sale, or you're probably going to be here over break, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think we all know, yeah.
so if you're all here over break, we can do something over break as well, but probably I need to do something next week. We might be able to do something virtual Tuesday night if people aren't back yet, or Monday night, depending on what people want to do. So,
I like that time.
so continuing on with reproduction. So areas to improve. If you're going on a farm, you need to kind of work through these areas. Is cow comfort okay? Is reproduction okay? So we've been going through reproduction, talking about things you might consider, things you might benchmark to decide, yes, they're doing well, no, they're not. So continuing on with that, if they've got a long calving interval, something beyond 13 months, 14, 15, 16, it may be by design. Back in when New York or BST was still used in here in New York, I think we pretty much phased it out. Still used in Texas, still used in California. That longer calving interval, by shifting the nutrients to milk production, became more economic to do that. Don't dry an animal off producing 100 pounds, milk her for a month or two longer, and you'll have a lower amount there, less stress. So that may be by design, and that's a question you have to ask, but it may be because you're not being successful in your reproductive program. Maybe animals are not showing heat. So this may be a nutritional issue. They don't have enough energy, enough nutrients to put together a good heat. Maybe they're lame, or in some cases, they're not even turning out their animals anymore. Animals are not outside. Stayed up in the tie stall, maybe not showing heats because they're there. Unless the people really know their animals well and are paying attention, it's going to be very difficult to do heat detection while animals remain in stalls. Or if they're in a free stall, if they're out, maybe we're just not getting the job done heat detection. On some places I've worked, we let the animals out first thing in the morning before milking, afternoon before milking. How fast they went out the door was usually an indication of heat. The animals pretty calm once you unhook them from the tie stall, out the door.
Why before milking and not after? Because then you would have to do all that work to get them back before milking.
It's just the way Michigan State worked.
And how long would they be up for?
About an hour. So you clean you let the animals out, you come in, you refresh the bedding. Once you got that done, usually took a half an hour. Somebody stood out there and watched to see who was in heat. Then you brought them in group at a time for milking. Might be better after, might be better before, but that's just the way they did things. So reproductive failure, the same themes over and over again: poor heat detection, poor breeding technique. You're not getting viable semen in the right place at the right time, capacitated and ready to go. You might see reproductive failure in a high days in milk average. We're not getting animals bred. The calving interval is creeping out. You've got a percentage of the herd that has a high days in milk. You do the average, you're up over 200 days in milk per animal. So the problem of where this might get hidden in other measurements is you start culling those animals. They're not getting bred. They're high days in milk. They're being shipped out. So you might see reasonable numbers in other areas, but you've got a high days in milk that's masked by a do not breed animals or something else. So certainly high average days in milk might be intentional. Seasonal calvings. Again, using the Rivingtons as an example, all the animals freshen in March and April. The herd goes up in days in milk all the way to Christmas, and then they're dried off. So again, if we're not getting the heat detection, we're missing cycles. Animals are not getting bred when they should. The herd creeps up in days in milk. And the same themes over and over again. Not showing heat, poor breeding performance, might be poor conception, might be related to heat detection if we're not getting the right timing on all that. You may also have the issue of abortions, animals that start a pregnancy and then restart. So that makes the same lactation and moves us to higher days in milk. You may have dealt with emergency situations where you have something else that's taking your time away and you're getting the cow's milk, but maybe not getting the animal's bread. And we have to remember too that days in milk is going to be a lagging indicator. So checking old days in milk versus current. Are they increasing? If we look at the back of the 202, are they increasing in days in milk? Or are they coming down in days in milk? Which direction are they going? Did they have some sort of situation? Perhaps somebody getting sick. We've got the dealing with the COVID infections up the dairy right now. We had our first positive last week. You've got one less person working there. Maybe everything doesn't get done as timely as it might. If we get two, we're in trouble. We're on a skeleton crew as it is. There's really no buffer there. We've had certain people calling us up, asking for help for a variety of reasons. So reproduction can be bottleneck, the thing that you need to improve on your dairy. Next thing we'll move on to is milking. Is the milking in some way, shape, or form compromised in some way? So milking management, why do we care? Care because we're dealing with kid food, at least historically.
Where'd you get a picture of me from?
I don't know. This was provided in the slides I received when I came here, and it's a good one. So milk is traditionally kid food. We want to make sure that we're producing a quality product for the kids. So we're thinking about milking. Two objectives we might consider. Milking practices. What are we doing to make sure that we maintain a high quality milk? Low somatic cell, low bacteria, high butterfat, high protein. What are we doing to make sure during our milking process, the milk extraction and transport, we're maintaining the high quality? Also with milking, we want to handle our animals properly to encourage letdown. We want a good, strong milk ejection reflex to make sure that our animals are completely milked out, that we're not backing up the system and causing problems in some way, shape, or form. So we'll express this a couple different ways, but this is one way to get started. So taking a look at our cow. Is she ready to be milked? Don't know. Our goal is well-stimulated, clean, dry teats. Once we've achieved that, it's time to put the machine on. So we've got a good, strong milk ejection reflex. Those teats are clean and dry. Clean as in no manure, clean as in low bacteria. You can't get 100% of them off. Dry as in no liquids that can end up in the milk and inoculate the milk with whatever's in the liquid. So how do we get all that stuff done? What do we do during prep to make sure that that's all taken care of? So we want to clean our hands and gloves. Wear gloves if we can. So if we clean our hands, we can lower the bacteria counts. We can also get rid of the contagious bacteria that might be harbored on our hands. The strep ag, the staph aureus that might be there. So particularly in the winter, if we're milking with bare hands, we've got a lot of different things happening on a farm. I've got real city hands now. These get blisters really, really fast. But when I was farming, all kinds of cracks and crevices, places for bacteria to hide, that makes it hard to clean your hands. So we wear gloves to make that process of disinfection of our hands easier. Has anybody ever sat in the back of biology class and just put your hand under the stereo microscopes and just looked at your hands? All the cracks, it looks like a topographical map. They just got these deep valleys all over the place, cuts, scars, all that fun stuff. That's hard to clean. The surface of gloves is very smooth. There's no place for bacteria to hide if you apply disinfectant to them. So fairly standard. Keep our cows clean. We're wearing gloves. We're not transmitting those bacteria. We're also, at least these days, with pre-dipping and post-dipping, trying to protect our hands from the chemicals that we're using. So it's one thing to dip a cow. It's another thing to repeatedly cover your hands over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Again, that can be a little harsh on your skin over time. So trying to keep the bacteria on your hands off the cow is our hope. Trying to separate a barrier, trying to work with clean hands as not to contaminate the cow. Another thing that's happened over my lifetime is we went from a common rag when I was a kid. There'd be 3 or 4 rags hanging in the milk house that may or may not dry out before the next milking. They went in a sanitizing solution. We sterilized the other, or tried to, usually by halfway through, that sterile solution was no longer sterile, which is why we've gone to individual wipes, individual towels. One per animal. We're not taking whatever's on this animal and moving it to the next animal, not cross-contaminating. So cloth is the way a lot of people are going. It does a better job gripping and scouring the teats, stimulating the teats. We don't want to carry the bacteria from one animal to the next, particularly the milk from contagious animals to the next. Staph aureus travels very nicely with a common towel. They used to use sponges to do all this, and there's no way you could sterilize this sponge. So individual wipes, basically biosecure. That wipe is associated with just that animal, and then we change it over to a new one for the next animal. There are some places to kind of cut down the costs. They'll flip a towel over. Has anybody seen that? Use one side to wipe down one cow, flip it over, wipe another animal. If you don't have a mastitis problem, that's probably one thing you might be able to get away with. If you have a mastitis problem, that might be the first thing you change. You don't want to be chintzy on that particular approach. So they changed over from cloths to paper towels. These don't clean as well as the cloth towels. We need to make sure not only we're cleaning the barrel of the teat, but getting down there and cleaning that end. And as I said before, there used to be sponges in a common bucket. That bucket wouldn't change the entire milking. 30, 40, 50 cows. You would, yes, that was a sterilizing solution to start with, but as you add manure, as you add dirt, as you add skin, dead skin to that solution, all that sanitizing power goes away. And you certainly doesn't penetrate that sponge. So there used to be milking sponges. They were very flat, very towel-like. They've gone away from those. So we used to, back in the old days, and we'll see this in labs somewhere along the way, they used to wash the cows first, then dip the cows, then milk the cows. We've gone away from that washing, sanitizing step. We found it's really not necessary. If we clean those with the pre-dip, that's enough to get the job done. And we have less water around the cows, less wet udders. Everybody knows that you can't dry perfectly, so we have less what I call cow tea. So you've got water on the udder, gravity continues to work. It goes down toward the teats. It goes on top of them. We'll show you a picture of it. It goes on top of the teat cup. And if there's a liner slip, that liquid off the cow ends up in the milk. So cow tea is ending up in the milk. You're basically bringing all the bacteria from the skin into the milk, and that's not a direction we want to go. So we're focusing on just a pre-dip now, not washing and sanitizing. We're cleaning, using a clean approved teat dip for the purpose. Make sure it's the right strength. Make sure it's not too harsh, that it's going to mess up your teat ends. We hope it has killing power. So killing power is a function of concentration times contact time. So if I have the right concentration, I lean it on long enough, it should sanitize the teats.
You have to make sure that it's human safe.
Yes, we want it to be human safe, although we have some issues with, you don't want to get this stuff in the eye, so it's
But
bad for your eyes.
I mean, in terms of like, if you don't wipe it off all the way and some of it goes into the, like if you leave some of it on and then you put the cup on.
They've done studies on that. I think they were done at Cornell by Dave Galton. If you're doing that pre-dip only as your sanitizing step, how much iodine ends up in the milk, and is that bad for humans? So the studies have been done. People should be doing a good job. They're doing a good job. It's inconsequential. But I guess if they're putting them on without wiping things off, that might be a problem. So killing power, we need to have it the right concentration. And we need that time in contact with the skin. So how long is it on there? Is it in good contact with the skin? So the rougher the skin is, the more likely it's not going to reach those bacteria and kill them. The smoother the skin is, the healthier the skin is, the more likely we are to get that off there. So most of the pre-dips come with a contact time on them. So 30 seconds, 45 seconds, whatever it is, you want to make sure that pre-dip is on there at the recommended length of time. So strength times time gives us a killing power. We want to make sure that with our dip cups, want to keep them clean through the milking process. If manure gets into our dip cups, it's going to reduce the killing power. That manure is going to neutralize a certain amount of killing power. That's going to leave less for the bacteria. We want to make sure that we're dipping half to 2/3, 3/4. You don't have to go all the way up. Let's make sure we get halfway up, all the way up, and then you have the liquid flowing down, and it almost re-inoculates or encourages the killing power to move through. So need to check our labels. There should be, for approved pre-dips, there is a contact time. So most of us try to leave it on there for a minute. That's going to cover most pre-dips. The ones I've read are 30 seconds to 45 seconds at the recommended dilution rate.
If you have, like, sometimes we have a bucket of iodine sitting out for when we need to refill the cups during milking. Having it sit out, does that, as time goes by, does that make it less potent to killing?
The question is, what's falling in there that would neutralize that killing power? So if you've got a bucket sitting out with a big open top, if you've got lots of dust falling in there, that's going to certainly lower the power.
But you don't have to worry about it, like.
It's not going to.
Not evaporating, but.
If it's a iodine based, no. If it's an ozone based one, you might, like a soda, it might be going flat over time. So depending on what the killing agent is, you might lose it that way, letting it sit out in advance. It should make a difference during the course of a milking, but maybe the course of a couple days, it might make a difference. Another thing we might consider as part of our milking prep is stripping. So there are advantages and disadvantages to doing this. Some places do it, some places don't. The higher your incidence of mastitis, probably the more benefit there is to doing it, checking which animals are infected. So the advantages of stripping. Good stimulation for letdown. You're not just wiping those teats. You're mimicking what a calf would do. So you're going to get more tactile stimulation of those teats, and that's going to encourage more milk letdown. It's an opportunity to check mastitis. So what is your mastitis? Is there anything present? We want to make sure we strip that in a place that's not going to land on the animal and not be tracked by that animal back to its bedding or anything like that. So strip cups are recommended. There's some thought that it might lower somatic cell. There's some arguments on that. It definitely will lower bacteria. Getting that bacteria out of the street canal, flushing that out, it should lower your milk bacteria. Is it enough to make a difference? I don't know. Disadvantages. Anybody give some thought to two of those? What they might be?
It'll take extra time, but it's not that much extra time. It's only like.
It depends on how many animals you're doing. So up at the dairy, you've got that time anyway. For 4 cows, they do sets of 4. Stripping each cow will allow that. So time is an issue. If you're prepping 20 or 10, taking the time to strip each cow might not fit into your routine. So how many animals do you have to prep? We'll show you a video where they don't do any stripping at all, but they're looking at like 15 seconds an animal, trying to milk in a double 20 something by one person milking in that parlor. We get to that. And the concern, particularly if it's contagious mastitis that shows up, where does that milk go? If you're stripping it out, it's not going in the tank. It might go in the drain. Some places don't have drains. We have a drain there at the dairy. If it goes on the floor, does it get tracked by the animal? If you squirt it on her hoof, you're going to have those bacteria on her hoof. If there's no foot bath going back, she might reinfect herself. So where does that mastitic milk go if it does show up? Making sure that it doesn't infect another animal in some way, shape, or form.
But wouldn't that be better than it going into the? Not that it's
Well-
good either way, but wouldn't it cause, I feel like it would cause more damage either financially or health-wise if it goes into the tank.
Given the amount of milk associated with the strip, it's probably not gonna make much of a difference financially for your milk check, but more bacteria in the milk, more opportunities to grow. So you can't deny that, but you're looking at a couple tablespoons usually from each quarter, maybe, or, 3-4 tablespoons total. That's not gonna over change much your total there. So trying to keep the milk clean, trying to make prep short. Has anybody clipped or singed udders? So has anybody clipped an udder? Guessing our two in the car might have. Might have lost them. Cows, there are certain cows that really don't like that clipper near their udder, and I don't necessarily blame them, especially if don't have guards on them and stuff to protect from the nicks and cuts. So clipping works fine. Cows don't really like it. It takes more time. If you can learn to singe successfully, you can do a cow probably in about 20 seconds. It would take you a lot longer to clip that same udder. Well, we'll show you here in a minute. It can be done. We do it in the parlor up at the dairy. We'll probably try to do this somewhere along the line in this class. Usually do the whole herd, but I gotta check dairy for udder singe.
And it doesn't, the advantage of it, outweighs the cow comfort aspects, the negative aspects of that.
Well,
That made sense at all.
I understand where you're going. So, downside of udder singeing, burns. If you don't do it right, if you don't protect those teat ends, you could really do some damage. On the other hand, and it used to be required that you had to clip all your animals in the winter. You had to clip their side, their flanks, and their udders if you're going to pass milk inspection. They're not as critical on that anymore because we're not using nearly as much water as we used to. We're focusing just on the teats. With the hair on the udder, particularly in the winter, you tend to get a lot of material that sticks to the udders. So it takes longer to clean and prep, and you're going to get more material or foreign matter in the milk, which is going to increase your bacteria count. So the skill, if you can do it with some skill, it's yes, definitely worth the effort. If you do it with causing some problems, that can be an issue.
I think more so not the effort of doing it, but the disadvantages that it would take away from cow comfort, because it's obviously probably painful and.
It's not painful if it's done right.
Okay.
But if it's done wrong, it's very painful. There's a big objection there with you guys learning for the first time, being the person who has to milk after. Because they're usually treating a lot of teat ends and stuff. What we've gone to is we dip the teats so they have a layer of protection, a liquid there to protect them. And that seems to have helped avoid severe problems. Cows, if you do it right, you're done before they know what's going on. It's a smell they don't like, but I don't think they're sure why. So burning hair is not a smell we enjoy as a rule. So let me see if I can get this running. So what do I have to do? I have to do this. Let's try that. So it can be done in the stalls. I'm a little leery of that, having flames around sawdust or hay or anything like that. But we're pretty comfortable doing it in the parlor here. If you're good at it, it only takes a couple seconds. And cows usually don't, unless you screw something up, they don't even know you're there. So there's that. So we talk about up at the dairy, you're going in front, middle, up the back. You might go between the back legs and get the sides going through, but re-swipes. You don't have to get it very hot, and I'll demonstrate that you can put your hand through that flame as long as you keep it moving. So that's the key. If you don't keep it moving, it's gonna hurt. Yep. We want to try not to let that happen. So there's another way. We had a student here. He's milking jerseys now. He learned another method on a place out in Ohio for an internship. They use a lighter and 70% alcohol. So get the flame up, squirt the alcohol through. The alcohol lands on the cow, and it's got a finite burn time. It tends to be a little cooler, but it tends to be a little tougher. You're constantly flicking, constantly squirting. So if you can do a few a day, it probably works out well. And you're trying to get a sprayer that produces a cone, not a stream. So a cone, not a fan, not a stream, but a cone of stuff. We found a sprayer that seems to work.
That's better than using the whatever you want to call it.
It's different.
You get more control.
Yeah. I would
There's.
be worried about it getting too hot or too out of control with the lighter and the.
It tends to be limited because there's only a certain amount of alcohol in the spray. So it tends to be limited that way. The challenge with the propane and the wand is that wand gets very, very hot. You cannot touch the cow with that wand. You can do the cooler part of the flame, which is the yellow or orange part. You got to keep the blue part away. If we get to it, we'll demonstrate that in some way, shape, or form. So the purpose of all our prep is we need to get our udders, or purpose of our singeing is to keep the udders and the milk clean. When they're very woolly in the winter, we get a lot more debris in the milk, and it usually increases the prep time. So what is our evidence for that? If you look at the sock before the milking before the udders are singed and the milking after the udders are singed. So as you lift up those teacups, you're going to pass all that stuff, more stuff falls in. So if you look at the milk sock before and after, this was a fairly dramatic example. Cows were fairly woolly. As you lift up those things, you got that vacuum. As it lifts up, it's going to pull that sawdust, especially if it's hanging at the end of the hairs, into that milking machine, and it's going to end up on the sock. So those are not clean. Yeah, but as we go through, the bacteria on that piece are inoculating we know that milk going through that sock is always warm, so bacteria are growing and multiplying on those pieces that are tracked on the sock. So that one was fairly dramatic. This one, not quite as dramatic, but it's still an improvement. Well, if the picture doesn't do it justice, but you had more big chunks at the bottom, less ones on this side. And I think overall there were just less chunks on there, but the color was different. So we want to try to lower the bacteria in the milk. And we talked about, does everybody remember the discussion of bad microbes? So bad microbes, things that do things have to be present. And then they need air, food, water, warmth, and an environment free of irritants and inhibitors. So if you're trying to lower the bacteria in the milk, the best thing to do is not have them there in the first place. So one of the first steps we might consider about lowering our bacteria on the cow might lead to lower bacteria in the milk. So if I get that animal cleaner, drier, it should introduce less bacteria into the milk. So as I was taught as an undergrad, management is the barrier between bacteria and the udder. This was discussed in the concept of mastitis. If I can keep the bacteria out of the inside of the udder, I'm more likely to not get that mastitis infection. So if we illustrate that, management is this piece right here. That bacteria are trying to get on the udder, trying to get into the udder. Our management has got to eliminate that in some way, shape, or form. So if we're doing our bedding management correctly, if we're doing our udder prep correctly, we should not be introducing bacteria. We should be minimizing the bacteria on our cows. So as part of our prep procedure, we want to make sure that we're not going milk from one cow getting to the next cow. So that's part of our prep. So we've gone to individual towels because of the teat dip we're handling. Our gloves, we should be minimizing the milk that goes from animal to animal, bacteria that goes from animal to animal. We'd also like our machines, at least we hope, not to spread an infection as well. So most of that milk is going to be pulled down in. Hopefully very little milk remains in the barrel of that teacup. Hopefully changing, minimizing things. We certainly don't want to have that common towel that we use that's going to take bacteria, the milk from one animal to the next. So our management goal is to keep the bacteria out of the milk, to keep our bacteria counts low. So where does the milk get the bacteria? Well, there might be bacteria inside the udder. So it's getting the bacteria from inside the cow. So we want to minimize mastitis. That's going to help us keep the bacteria counts low in the milk. We want to make sure that we're cleaning out our machines, not leaving bacteria in those machines. That as the more milk comes from the cow, fosters that growth somewhere in that machine, and that bacteria is added to the milk. We want to make sure our tank gets cleaned, so we're not introducing milk or bacteria there. We want to make sure that our cooling is rapid to eliminate the ability of those bacteria to reproduce. The cooler it is, the slower they grow. The slower they grow, the lower our bacteria counts. So once we've prepped that udder, we want to make sure that once we get it clean, we keep it clean. We don't want to recontaminate our udders with the parlor hose. We're trying to keep the floor clean, trying to keep the manure down, but as we spray that hose, some of that water is going to go up. And if it goes up, it has the potential of getting on the udder. After milking, those teat ends are very open, very loose. As that cow moves, she's going to change the pressure inside her udder, and stuff might get sucked in. So the general rule of thumb is that you don't squirt down or clean the parlor until all the cows are out of hose range. So we don't want to spray that manure all over the place. We don't want to spray it on their legs because that can recontaminate their udder when they lay down. We don't want to spray it up onto the udder. So the general rule of thumb is resist that temptation. You're just going to make it worse. Wait until everybody's cleaned out, then take a moment to hose down that parlor or push things out of the way before the next group comes in. So here's a picture of what I talked about before. If we have lots of water on the udder, or we're spraying in the parlor, or we're doing a lot of prep or sanitation, if we don't get all of it, gravity is going to force that down. The lowest point is the top of the milking machine, the teat cup. Water is coming down, it's going to pool on the top of that liner. If there is a liner slip, the tea that was created on the cow is going to slide in and it's going to mix in with the milk. There's a whole lot of bacteria in that liquid coming off the cow. Some of it might be good, some of it might be bad, but it's going to increase our bacteria counts. That water, we want to keep that water from the animal out of the milk if we can. Once we're done milking, we need to consider post-dipping. So you want the end and the middle portions of the teat covered. You're working your way up. Covered. So you've got that teat end dilated for approximately 2 hours after milking. Not sure there's anything we can do to prevent that, but as that muscle relaxes, it's going to take a while to close down that teat end. So the end portions are dilated. We want them to stand up a little bit after milking if we can. So it's nice if we can have fresh feed there. They stop by the feed on the way back. They have a meal. Meal takes about 30 minutes. Drink some water, maybe another 10, 15 minutes. That for an hour after milking, they're standing up. And if we have clean beds, we should be fine. The whole canal is dilated for a while. So 8-hour milking, you're going to have that dilated most of the day. Whereas 12-hour, we might have half of the time dilated, half not dilated. So putting that post-dip on is an attempt to kill the bacteria on the teat end to prevent them from getting into the teat canal. And if we go halfway up, 2/3 of the way up, the gravity is going to let that teat dip move down and continually kind of sanitize that teat end. But again, the management's trying to be the barrier between the two. So we want to get that dip on first before bacteria have a chance to get to that teat end. So dip as soon as possible after machine removal. So we want to make sure that we get good sanitation up there. We want to beat that bacteria to the teat end. So going half, 2/3, I guess in this case, 3/4 of the way up. And she needs a good singe. So that's it for today. We'll continue on milking routines next time.
Have a good day, Dr. Moon.
You too. Yes.
All the catalogs are in your office.
Okay.
So I'll be there around 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
And then I talked with Marshall for 160. They're doing a, so I can pull it up, an 8 to 4 and then 4 to 8 shift is what she had students sign up for sale week.
Okay, so splitting it throughout the
Yes.
night. So we'll have to figure out Monday what we're doing here for in the morning. So 8 to, what was it?
It was 8 p.m. till 4 a.m.
4 a.m.
and then 4 to 8 for the morning shift.
Okay, so she's got those two there.
I'll send these in an email out to the 450 class, just so we can discuss it. either
Okay.
Thursday or Friday.
We can discuss it Thursday or Friday. So we haven't signed people up yet here.
Okay,
We'll try to, we got a very limited, but we talked about the mornings, half classes in here. So
Right.
We'll get it sorted next week, depending on how it all works.
okay,
So, okay,
perfect, thank you.
thank you, sir.